So, thank you very much for having us, Barry and the team. I'm Kim Atherton, and I'm an occupational psychologist by background, and for the last 6 years, I've been involved in scaling OVO Energy as a Chief People Officer.
And hello everyone, I'm Ed Connolly. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at OVO. I've been there for just coming up to 5 years now.
So, we want to tell you a little bit about the transformation programme that Ed and I led at OVO Energy, why we did that, how we did it, and then most importantly, some of the learnings that we took from that. But first of all, who are OVO? So this picture was taken in 2012, about a week before I started. And there's a big reason I've chosen a picture that was before I started, because my haircut was really, really terrible. But I joined OVO in 2012 when there was around about 50 or 60 people. And we had launched into the energy market in 2009 as a green energy startup, essentially. We were an alternative to the big 6 energy providers. And at the time, we were one of the only alternatives. So there really weren't that many providers in the market. And we were started with a vision to be a better, cleaner, simpler, fairer energy company. But essentially, we were a kilowatt-hour retailer. So, i.e., we bought energy from the wholesale market, we packaged it up, we tried to make a margin, and then we sold it to customers in the UK. So we were essentially a contact centre business. Fast forward 6 years, and quite a lot has changed.
So today, we're a company of around 2,000 employees. We've recently received a £1 billion valuation, thanks to our friends in Mitsubishi pumping in £200 million of cash. But importantly, we've completely changed OVO's business model. It's no longer about selling kilowatt hours. It's now about making a business out of decarbonising consumers' homes. So that's everything from building a bidirectional electric vehicle charger to smart boilers, smart thermostats, and everything in between. So we've gone through a lot of scaling, but we've got a big one to come. I don't know if you saw in the news, but we have recently purchased SSE. They're quite a bit bigger than us, it turns out. So we've kind of got to unicorn status, but we're about to go from unicorn status to multi-unicorn status, whatever that means. So we've done a bit of scaling, but some hairy scaling in front of us too.
So that was essentially to introduce who we are as OVO, but I want to take you back a little bit to around about 2013 and frame the problem that we needed, that was in front of us, that meant we needed to go through organisational transformation. So back in those days, so when we started 2009, the iPhone had literally only just launched. When we launched OVO Energy, we were essentially coming into a market dominated by the big 6. And not only did consumers not have much choice in terms of who their energy provider was, but they also didn't have that much expectations in terms of whether they had an app or not, and how they interacted with their energy provider. But there were some huge trends that were going on in our industry, which meant we really had a burning platform to make huge changes. So the first was that the number of domestic energy suppliers was suddenly exploding. So instead of just essentially British Gas, Centrica, the big 6, and then OVO, all of a sudden more and more energy providers started coming onto the market. And really, the easy way, if you want to acquire customers, if you're a new entrant to the market, is basically just to drop your prices and go onto a price comparison website. And then you become the cheapest and you acquire customers. And there were, around about kind of this time, 2014-15, there were some of our competitors who were operating on a minus 25% margin in order to acquire customers. Now, the only way to make that business model work is obviously to rip off your existing customers. And that was something OVO Energy had always said we were not going to do. So it was one price for everybody. So we were really in this, in this dilemma. And to make matters worse, the average consumption of energy per household was also falling. And we saw that as a good thing. We're a green energy provider. We want to encourage that. But we were finding ourselves in essentially a marketplace where margins were in the negative. Loads of competitors were coming onto the market. Household energy was going down, and consumer expectations were just going up and up in terms of how they expected to interact with us. And not only that, there were other changes in our industry.
So up until about 2014, almost all energy suppliers, organizationally and across their systems, operated under the model that you kind of get one data point every 3 months, 6 months, maybe once a year. With smart meters coming along, that changed to 17,500 data points per person per year. We also actually now have devices which are Wi-Fi connected in the home that give us a data point every 3 seconds, so millions. So we're talking 5 orders, 6 orders, 7 orders of magnitude, more data occurring in the last few years in the energy sector than anything that happened prior to that. We've also seen really dramatic global trends playing out. The electrification of transport and heat are massive, and they're going to happen. So this is a bit of a view of how EVs are changing, but we saw these as opportunities that we need to take advantage of. So, in summary, OVO is growing very quickly as a business. There are global trends playing out that need to be taken advantage of. And I think we reached a point where we realized that operating under our current model, which, if we're honest, was a little bit traditional, a bit top-down, people telling other people exactly what to do, was no longer going to work in such a complex and rapidly changing environment.
So what we did to address this, I remember standing up in our all-hands meeting, our kind of town hall, with the CEO in probably around about 2014. And we talked about the fact that at the moment we were one big company. We weren't quite as big as this. I think we were probably about 1,000 people. But we were essentially operating as one company. And what that meant was we were one team. We had one essentially organizational backlog. We were essentially prioritizing from the same stuff. But in order to move faster and to focus on customer outcomes, not just on lots and lots of deliverables, we needed to move from this one ship to a flotilla of ships. And so essentially what we wanted to do was to break the organization up into a series of independent but aligned business units, all pulling in the same direction, but all of whom had complete autonomy and control over solving the customer outcomes. And we didn't just mean this from a product and tech perspective. So I know we talk a lot about full stack teams in product and tech and cross-functional networks of teams. We meant this at an organizational level. So we wanted to move to entirely different business units, all of which were really focused on achieving customer outcomes for specific segments of the business.
We also thought that this would be a good opportunity for us to look at how we were doing our technology as well. So moving to teams that were more independent, focused on problems, we wanted to make sure that our technology could support that as well. That means teams can make changes in technology without it impacting somebody in a different team. So taking the opportunity to decouple our architecture, but also to invest in our engineering practices as well. So investing a lot in automation of test and release processes. You know, over this kind of 2-3 year period from, say, 2015, maybe 2014 to 2017, we moved from making one release every 2 weeks as a whole company to releasing every few minutes into production. So that's a little bit about what we did, but I think the real meaty stuff of this is some of the things that we learned along the way. And I think it's been a bit of a theme for today, and something that I think Kim and I agree is maybe the really big shift for OVO was this moving away from outputs, lists of stuff, towards outcomes, business metrics or customer metrics for teams and business areas to focus on. I think what we saw was that was probably easier for teams to take that transition, to turn around to a team and say, hey, now you're responsible for a conversion metric. For leadership, it's actually a really big transition because you're asking leaders to kind of fundamentally change what their job was. Previously, it was telling people what to do. Now we're asking them to work with their teams to help create goals that lead to successes in the long term and support them in making experiments and bets that work out. That's a really big mindset shift, and maybe something that we underestimated a bit to begin with, how much help leadership would need to get into that new mindset.
We also, I think, probably underestimated the importance of communicating the vision. So OVO has a really strong vision about decarbonising the world's energy industry. It's a really inspiring, exciting mission and vision. But when we were going through this change and this transition, I don't think we communicated it enough. So we probably had a disconnect at the top with people essentially you're not perhaps buying into the outcome-driven methodology, but also we had a disconnect coming from the bottom with people saying we need the vision, we need to have it communicated. And so again, if we'd had our time again, I think we would have all probably spent a lot more time and put a lot more effort into communicating. Is it the average 10 times more when people are going through change? But really reiterating why we were going through this change and what we were all here to do. And very linked to the to communicating the overall vision was aligning the outcome-based goals. So I think we thought a lot about the difference between outcomes and outputs. We thought a lot around making sure that teams or customer value streams would own the outcomes, that they would own their experiments and their bets and their hypotheses in order to drive those. What we perhaps hadn't thought as much about is to make sure that the two perhaps different brands or different value streams or different areas didn't have outcomes that conflicted with each other. So to give you an example, OVO Energy, so going back to all of our brands, OVO Energy was essentially our pay monthly energy brand. They had customer metrics that were around reducing cost to serve. Difficult though that is to measure. I was having a conversation with someone earlier. So essentially their business was around trying to make the process more automated, improve retention on the app so that we could take cost out of the contact centre, and essentially reduce cost to serve as their metric. But then we had another team who were building a real-time billing system in order to take advantage of the smart meter data coming our way. And their outcome was to migrate all of our customers onto the new billing platform. And of course, that is expensive and it takes time. And so you have two outcomes that are literally opposed to each other. And what we hadn't done as a leadership team is to really sit down and think at the very top, okay, from the vision, what's the next level down, and are these two things able to coexist? And if they're not, then how do we make a priority call? And that's something we took us a long time to try to get our heads around.
I think the other point that's changed a lot, and something that we've mentioned a few times now already, is this transitioning into an experimentation mindset. And really what that means is trying things incrementally, okay, but we're now asking everybody across the whole organization to become much more accepting of failure. I'm going to try something and maybe it's going to work and maybe it's not going to work. And if I've learned something and it hasn't worked out, I still need to kind of applaud that and congratulate that maybe to a similar extent to if something was successful. And I think that that's something that we found difficult to do. And I also think we found it difficult to, again, maybe felt like experimentation was something that teams would do. And at a leadership level, we still found it hard to stop big bets coming out. So we had an example, maybe three years or so ago, where we thought that we wanted to go into the broadband space. So the way that we approached thinking we wanted to go into the broadband space was we set up a broadband company. So we went to get the licenses for it, we bought the third-party software for it, we integrated it with all our apps, we did everything. It took us about 6 months. We started a broadband company, we started trying to sign people up for it. Within about 4 months, we figured out that it turns out we weren't differentiating in that space and people didn't really want to buy broadband from their energy supplier. So about a year down the line, we figured out that we didn't want to sell broadband, and we probably could have figured that out in 5 minutes by putting a button on the website saying, do you want to buy broadband? The other thing that we learned was around data. So I kind of split this down into two sides. One is the data for the teams and their outcomes. So if you move to an outcome-based approach, you're measuring your teams on 1, 2, or 3, 4 key metrics. they need to have access to those metrics, and they need to be readily available and easily and cheaply available to you as an organization. That's something that you need to invest in to make this work. I think the other thing is about asking teams to start measuring themselves with some data. Like, what do I need in order to introspect on myself as a team? Maybe it's things like velocity or test coverage or how frequently you release, whatever those metrics are. Really great for teams to have those to learn a bit about themselves. Really bad for management and leadership team to take those metrics and start using the way as judging performance or promoting people or punishing people. We also learned that in moving to these kind of cross-functional teams, we were getting a lot from, let's say, rate of change. But what we were starting to see was siloing in our organization. So people had kind of stopped talking to each other. And so we started looking at how we can create communities to reconnect people across these different cross-functional teams. And to begin with, we did that in a relatively half-hearted way, and it went some way to solving the problem. But I think our realization has been, certainly in the last couple of years, if you want to have successful communities, you need to invest in them. You need to help people, support people, recognize people that are leading these communities. As a leadership team, we need to create the right framework so there's visibility of communities. It's not something that you can just hope to happen. It's something that needs your attention as a leader to make happen.
Something that I saw a lot of during all of this change, so I was really, I guess, concerned with employee satisfaction, and I could see employee satisfaction essentially, or employee engagement, sorry, going down, because people were just overwhelmed by all of this rate of change and this new world, and we hadn't thought about giving them any conditions that provided them with any sort of level of transparency. So all of a sudden, nobody could work out who was in which cross-functional team or which cross-functional brand, because Workday, great HR system, but doesn't reflect the new world. Nobody knew how what they did laddered up, so there was no understanding of why I was making this bet or this initiative or this investment. What was the metric that I was looking to move? The leadership team knew it, but I might not know it as a software engineer. And then there was, I guess, a lack of visibility across different teams about the bets or initiatives or experiments that we were doing. And so particularly in different locations, we were reinventing the wheel when we could have actually learned from each other. And how that manifested itself, so how we started noticing, was on our employee engagement surveys. People started saying, I'm being asked for endless reporting all the time. So I have to do a PowerPoint deck and an Excel and a Confluence page and an intranet and a this and a that. And all the time I'm having to do all of this reporting, because all of a sudden the senior team are losing faith with the fact that what we're doing has got that golden thread all the way up to the strategy. So, as Chief People Officer, I was really interested in this problem, and I wanted to have some sort of way of making these things visible. And I looked into the market, and I found some amazing ticketing systems, great ticketing systems and roadmap systems. And I found some really, really good hierarchical OKR systems. So some really, really good ones where if I can cascade from my boss and my direct reports can cascade from me and so forth. What I needed was a way of making this new world transparent. I needed a way for cross-functional teams to come together, for those cross-functional teams to be able to be built up like Lego blocks to say this is our customer value team or overall tribe or department. I needed people to be able to set customer outcomes and for that golden thread to link through from the strategy all the way through to the initiatives. So I hired a UX designer, and we spent probably about 6 months sitting with employees and essentially saying to them, how can we help you? How can we make your lives easier? And we essentially, as a result, built a system called Just Three Things. Now, Just Three Things, as it looks today, when we first built it, it was built in SharePoint, and it was so horrible. And so we've thrown it away a number of times. But essentially, Just Three Things is a software platform which allows teams to come together to declare their mission and to declare where they fit in the structure of the new organization. and then to declare their customer outcomes or business outcomes that they're aiming for, so to declare their focus. They can prioritise their top 3 outcomes, and they can then link the initiatives or bets or hypotheses that they're working on to their outcomes. We then get the alignment all the way through from the overall vision of the company, the strategic pillars, the big strategic outcomes we're looking to achieve, and then all the way through to what am I working on. So we can have a look at the alignment piece throughout the company at any one time. And everything in Just 3 Things is entirely transparent. So we can help people to discover things that are going on around the company that are similar. Is anyone else making a similar bet? Can we learn from each other? What's been done in the past? What was archived? How can we query all of this and learn from it? We wanted to make sure that what we weren't doing was telling people to double key or to by saying to people, look, you've got these tools you love doing. Now we're going to come top down in management. We're going to tell you to do something else. So it was really important to us to integrate with tools that our people already liked using, like Jira, Slack, Trello, and so forth. So we started to build out integrations into the platform. And the idea was we brought the teams together. What we didn't do was replace what they were using to be really super efficient within their team. So we released probably the MVP of Just 3 Things, probably like 2015 into OVO, so really early, but we iterated a lot of times. And essentially we found that the platform really helped to increase productivity. Really helped to reduce endless meetings and endless reporting because people had somewhere where they could understand how they fitted in. And in 2017, I was talking at a conference and I was using Just 3 Things as an example of innovation in HR. And I had a couple of people come up to me and say, that looks really interesting because I'm also going through this type of transformation. Can I have a look at it and could I get my hands on it? So we did a 6-month beta program in 2017, early 2018, with companies like Veolia and the NHS. And essentially, the results that came back was, yes, people are finding this useful from an employee engagement perspective because I feel more engaged. Therefore, we are now launched as a separate business, and we're working with a wide range of businesses essentially to help them align and get that golden thread between strategic pillars, customer outcomes, initiatives and bets, and then day-to-day work. This is not a sales pitch at all. We have a stand around the corner. You can come and talk to us. We're happy to take questions. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Have any questions?
One of the big challenges you mentioned early on was the massive shift for leadership, that it was probably a bigger shift for them than it was for everyone else. I'm interested in how you went about facilitating that shift.
So the question was the shift in leadership mindset required in order to really move from, I guess, more traditional ways of working to the new way. Do you want to kick that one off, Ed? Yeah.
I would say that we did a few things. I think, firstly, starting small is important because if you try and do it all at once, I think you're going to lose trust very quickly. I think we started small. We had a core group of people internally that really wanted to make the change happen. We actually brought in some kind of leadership agile coaches into our organization as well, with a little bit of external help on that. I think helped, and a bit of leadership coaching for those leaders that may be resisting some of this change. But I would say starting small on this process, demonstrating some of the value of it incrementally, and then you have the ability to roll it out across your organization. If you try and click your fingers or you go on a big change program and the idea is that your whole company is going to change in 6 months, I don't think that that's possible. We've been on this journey for years and years, and we get more and more mature as every week goes by. But I think it's a very long road, not a thing that you just start and finish.
I think it helps that we had the overall CEO brought in. So I don't think we could have done this without that level of sponsorship, because I think we certainly had people who were from more traditional businesses for whom this was a really, really, really big mindset shift. And I think what's really important from a, I guess, people perspective is almost we had a brilliant agile leadership coach, I can't remember her name, Helen.
Helen Williams.
And what she did was almost create us a lexicon that didn't use any words to do with agile or scrum or anything like that. It was literally the kind of John Smart way of thinking of what does this mean for customers, what does it mean for employees, and let's create some common understanding without it feeling like it's this trendy new thing that you're doing, you product and tech people are doing over here. I think we might be out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.